Hey, today I've titled today's talk, What's the Point? So we're going to be in the book of Ecclesiastes, chapter 3. And I always love, a lot of scholars they believe that it was Solomon, King Solomon, that wrote the book of Ecclesiastes. There's some debate because there's a few things where they're like, well, it could be this, it could be that. But generally it's believed that it was Solomon that wrote the book of Ecclesiastes. And Solomon's also the guy who wrote Proverbs, right? So Solomon he's regarded as like one of the wisest guys who ever lived. So he writes this book Ecclesiastes, and he's at this point in his life where he's a little older. Solomon was a very charming guy. He was very successful in life. Young people would say he had a lot of riz, right? Every parent in the room is like, my gosh, I'm so tired of this language. I worked against my 10-year-old this week because he comes home and it's a new phrase every day. So I pulled up on my phone. We're at dinner and I propped my phone up against my cup and I just pulled up Generation Z and Generation Alpha slang. And so I was just really trying to communicate with him and he just kept telling me I had brain rot. I don't know what that means, but it doesn't sound good. I have a doctor's appointment coming up soon, so we're going to talk about this. But Solomon was successful, stupid wealthy. Like year-long, like literal parties that would last over a year. And everybody in the world would come. It would be like me having a party, if I was a gazillionaire, and like the Queen of England would come to the party just because it was that good of a party. Stupid wealthy, stupid successful, stupid smart. Like very, very, very successful by any worldly standards. Solomon is often regarded as one of the wealthiest men who ever lived, because of all the how great, large the kingdom was that he oversaw and just all the things that he had. He's regarded as one of the wealthiest guys who ever lived. And so he gets to this point towards the end of his life. He's an older guy. He's lived it all. If you've ever read the book of Ecclesiastes, you know the phrase, there's nothing new under the sun. It comes from Ecclesiastes. And vanity, all is vanity, comes from the book of Ecclesiastes. And this whole idea that like everything's a cycle, everything, he opens up Ecclesiastes chapter 3 just talking about there's a time for everything. And he lists all the different like seasons and things. There's a time for happiness, there's a time for sadness, there's a time for life, there's a time for everything. And then he gets to Ecclesiastes chapter 3 and he says this, what's the point, right? He says, what do people really get? What do people really get for all their hard work? Like, what's the point? He says, I have seen the burden God has placed on us all. I have seen it. I've understood it. I've worked. I've toiled. I actually almost went with, I like the New Living Translation. I think it's pretty plain spoken, plainly written. But I almost liked the NIV because they use the word, what do people really get for all their toil? And I just liked the way the word toil communicated there. What's the point of it all? What do we really get for all of our hard work? I have seen the burden God has placed on us all. Yet, God has made everything beautiful for its own time. That's also in the book of Ecclesiastes. You read the book of Ecclesiastes and you see some of the things that it says and you think, wow, I saw that on TV once. I saw that on a fortune cookie. That was in a motivational book. Like there's some good stuff in Ecclesiastes. God has planted eternity in the human heart. But even so, people cannot see the whole scope of God's work from beginning to end. So I concluded there's nothing better than to be happy and enjoy ourselves as long as we can. One scholar said Solomon's trying to kind of communicate this like carpe diem, seize the day kind of attitude here. And there's a little bit of that. Like God desires for us to enjoy life. Like we're not supposed to be just so miserable constantly with life. Like God wants us to be, he wants us to be happy. He wants us to be joyful. He wants us to be content. And Solomon writes this from a place of someone who enjoyed everything that life has to offer. And then we'll continue in verse 13. He says, and people should eat and drink and enjoy the fruits of their labor, for these are gifts from God. So it's not just that we should enjoy life, but we should enjoy the things we have, the material things in life and the circumstances we have in life, because these are gifts from God. And I know that whatever God does is final. Nothing can be added to it or taken from it. God's purpose is that people should fear him. This phrase right here, God's purpose is that people should fear him, is widely debated. What does this mean? One scholar I read said, like, God literally demands that we're just afraid of him, like a cowering child. Like this dude, this commentary, he was a little bit more, I'd say, emo with it. This time of year it's like back to school season, so I think back to high school, and I was kind of emo freshman year of high school. I listened to Fall Out Boy and Taking Back Sunday. Some of you guys are like, hey, I know those bands. Some of you guys are like, who the heck is that? That's okay. But like Solomon's kind of, he's pretty just cut to the chase with it. He's not really like, beat around the bush. He just says like, God, his purpose is that people should fear him. And this is so widely, we should fear God. And we're going to talk about that a little bit more, but it's just like people debate, what does this mean? What does it mean that we should fear God? And sometimes we get it in this like, I fear God, he's so good. And it's almost like this like fluffy kind of fear, But there's also like an element to that fear of God where like, he's all powerful. Like this is the God who created the heavens and the earth, just spoken into existence. Like God is powerful. There's a healthy level of fear we should have for the Lord. And then he says, what's happening now has happened before. What will happen in the future has happened before, because God makes the same things happen over and over again. And this is essentially the same. There's nothing new under the sun. Everything's a cycle. Everything repeats. Everything continues on. The same thing. Nothing is new. And there's a lot of debate on like how deep does this dive? There's this, when I was in college and I took an Old Testament class, Old Testament survey, and it was actually really interesting. My professor was kind of like Indiana Jones. Like in the summer, he would go do these archaeological digs, and it was just like the cool. He had like classic like archaeology kind of look to him. He would wear like vests over like cool shirts, and like he had like perfect hair and this just nice groomed beard. His name was Harvey Hartman, which just sounds like a cool. He was a cool guy. And he would go on these digs in the summer, but he was really good at teaching Old Testament history. And one of the things he told us about the kind of the cycle of humanity is everything is great with God. We're in love. We're happy. He says this is what happened in the Garden of Eden, is we were just so grateful and pleased to be with God. And then humanity does something to kind of mess it up, and the separation begins. And so the phase one of the cycle is everything's great with God. And then phase two of the cycle is we start to drift away from God. And then phase three of the cycle is we're so far from God, we've cut God out of everything. And then phase four is, oh shoot, we're in trouble, we need God. And then God comes in and rescues us. And then we're back to phase one where everything is good and fluffy with God. And then we get back to where we start drifting away from God, we get into trouble. Oh no, we need God. God saves us, God rescues us. And he said, this is just the cycle of mankind. If you read the Bible, he said, this is what it looks like in the Bible. And I was at a conference a couple of years ago, watching a conference online, and it was for young people. It was like how to reach young people in this day and age. And one of the things they said is we're at the point in the cycle where we're in between the generations. They broke it down by generation, and so it's like we're at the millennial kind of phase in the cycle is we really kind of need God now. And then Gen Z and Gen Alpha, the speaker, I forget who it was, actually said that Gen Z and Gen Alpha are going to lead the next revival in God's church. Like Gen Z and Gen Alpha are going to be the initiators of God becoming a greater emphasis in our lives. Like young people today sitting up here, they're going to lead the church in 10, 15 years from now. They're going to be where revival breaks out. And then the cycle will continue. And that's kind of what Solomon's getting at here. He says that nothing's new under the sun. God makes the same things happen over and over again. And that, to me, that sounds boring. I get bored easily. I've never been diagnosed with ADHD. I diagnosed myself on WebMD, but I'm convinced that there's an element. I get fussy. My office at home, I change it around every couple months. I just get bored with it. But at the same time, I love to watch TV shows that I've watched before. TV is boring. There's nothing new on TV. There's a ton of new stuff, but none of it's good. I was sick earlier this summer. I was in bed for 3 days. Just the sinus infection wouldn't go away. And I'd always wanted to watch Yellowstone. So I watched 3 seasons of Yellowstone in just a few days. Great show. We got to the 5th season, I quit watching. It got boring. But you notice that, TV is so formulaic. I had this bad habit of going back and watching a show that I really enjoyed 5, 10, 15, 20 years ago for the sake of nostalgia. And then I get to a point in the show where I'm like, oh, I remember what happens, I'm done. Like my Netflix and Hulu queue have me like halfway through shows and just they sit there stagnant until I either return to it or start it over. Like that's just how I am. I get bored with the cycle, with the repetitiveness. But then Solomon says like the reality is that's just life, man. Like that's just life. But I love how he opens this up because he says, what's the point of all of it? Like what do we really get for all their hard work? I've seen the burden God has placed on us all, on mankind. Like I've seen this burden. And what he's getting at here, what he's trying to get us to understand is this idea that work without purpose is worthless. That work without purpose is worthless. I think too often we get in this cycle and these habits of just doing things because that's how we've always done things in our lives, right? Like you think about what's your average day look like? Get up in the morning, stumble out of bed, rub your eyes, brush your teeth, put your contacts in, do your hair, makeup, whatever. Get dressed, get the kids ready for school, get the kids off of school, drink a little coffee, go to work, you do your thing at work, you go eat lunch, finish lunch, do work the rest of the afternoon. I tell you, man, something between like that 9 to noon goes by so fast, but like that 1 to 4, 1 to 5, you know what I found the secret is to getting through that afternoon is to eat a snack. I bring snacks to work in the afternoon. Like I'll go home for lunch and I come back with snacks because what I'm realizing is I just got to interrupt the afternoon a little bit. So I'll change up. Like 2 o'clock, I'll eat my beef steak and my Cliff Bar. But hold on Tuesday, I'm gonna eat it at 3 o'clock instead. We're really gonna mix it up. And instead of drinking a cup of coffee, I'm gonna drink a cup of Earl Grey. And then instead of honey today, I'm gonna put granulated sugar in my Earl Grey. I'm gonna really mix things up. And then the day ends, you go home, you drive home, probably the same route, because there's only like 2 ways to get anywhere in Fairfax County. It's horrible. And then you get home, you do your thing with the kids, eat some dinner, shower night, get the kids in bed, watch a little TV, then you go to bed. You wake up and do the same thing the next day, right? The cycle repeats. And there's nothing wrong with that. Like Solomon is saying, like the whole idea behind this passage is this, everything repeats, everything's a cycle, so enjoy the cycle. Like enjoy this moment you're in. That's the point, is there is a purpose to it. There's a purpose to our work. And I think sometimes like we work and we tell ourselves like this is just like in the corporate world, this is where we get it. So like we go and we're just so drained working our corporate job, wearing the same suit every day, with switching it up with a bow tie, and instead of a normal tie, and then on Wednesday we'll wear a skinny tie, and then Friday instead of dress pants we're gonna wear blue jeans. Do they still do blue jeans Friday? Is that still a thing? Because I go to some places and there are people wearing blue jeans every day, and I'm like, this is so trendy. My first job, I worked at a nursing home. It was my first job I had. I was a receptionist. And they tried blue jeans Friday for a while, but it was when skinny jeans were a thing. And so we had to stop blue jeans Friday because everyone was wearing too many skinny jeans. And I guess the older folks in the home they were not happy about it. They had a lot of comment cards they were putting in. Like, this is just too much skin we're seeing in these jeans. And I was just like, skinny jeans, it's the vibe, man. But this whole idea of work without purpose is worthless. Sometimes we just get caught in the cycle of things that we forget why we're doing the things we're doing. And I struggle with this so much, man, just getting caught in the cycle, just checking off the box of day to day to day. All right, we got through Monday, here comes Tuesday, let's go. How are we gonna shake things up? And you're just caught in this cycle. And you begin to lose that sense of purpose and that sense of worth because every day is just another day. You're like Garfield, except every day is Monday. And you're just caught in this cycle of just repeating over and over, and it just begins to get so worthless. This is why people do like dumb things. Like research shows that people will go and do reckless things because they've just lost this sense of purpose and excitement in their lives. But Solomon says, like, we should enjoy that, man. What a gift. I'm a horrible person to watch TV and movies with. Not just because I watch the same things over and over, But like when a movie's coming out, it costs $1,000 to go see a movie, and that's before you even got popcorn and a drink. So I like to go on Wikipedia the day the movie releases, and I look at the synopsis of the movie, like the recap of the movie. I know, spoiler alert, I spoil movies. I know, my wife gets on to me about it all the time. She says, hey, did you hear about this? I said, I already read the whole thing. But honestly, for me, I read like 900 words a minute. So for me, reading a movie synopsis in like 2 minutes versus sitting for 2.5 hours, paying $1,000, like there's a better ROI for me just to read the synopsis here. Like the return of investment is much better. But what that does is like, then I like to go, if the synopsis is good, then I'll say, hey, it's worth watching this when it comes to Disney Plus. It's worth watching this when it comes to Netflix. And so like we'll watch shows together, and I just like the show's moving too long. So I'll start looking up like on Wikipedia or whatever, like the episode recaps, because I want to know like, does this get good? Like, does this show get good eventually? Does it stay good? Like I started rewatching Scandal, horrible show. Don't watch it, kids, don't watch it. Terrible show. I feel like I know everything there is to know about politics. I'm just waiting for one of our candidates to call me up and ask me to help with the campaign, because good grief, like that's just, it doesn't matter what side you're on, it's all a mess. That's a cycle I'd love to break. We're praying for him. But like I look up the synopsis because I like that predictability. I want to know what's next in the cycle, what's coming up. And I think we do that in life. Solomon talks about here that God has placed eternity in our hearts, but we're not capable of understanding it. And what that means is we have this desire in our hearts to understand the intricacies of eternity. Like we want to know everything that's coming. We want to know everything there is to know. Like that's just a natural inclination in our, like it's a natural desire, a natural thought process in our heart is we want to know everything that's going to happen, everything that has happened. We want to know down below whatever, there's nothing below an atom, but we want to know down to the atoms about everything that exists and happens in life. That's an innate, like it's built in our hearts. God has placed that desire in our hearts. But Solomon says it's frustrating, and we get frustrated because we're humans. We're incapable of understanding the complexities of life. And so what I find in my own life is sometimes when work without purpose is worthless, I've got to stop searching for the synopses of life. I've got to stop searching for the answers, because sometimes I get so stuck. Like there are people, Bible scholars, man, when I was at Liberty, when I was in Bible college, I did 2 semesters on campus, and these dudes would stay up till 3, 4 in the morning. And like in college, that's normal, right? You know, all night game sesh, watching TV, partying. Dude, these dudes would sit up till 3, 4 in the morning with their Bibles debating theology and trying to understand the complexities of the universe. And I'm like, you guys are boring. And I go to my friend, hey, let's go play a little World of Warcraft. We still got 3 days left on the trial. But these dudes would stay up trying to understand the complex. And then at 5 a.m., we had a curfew. So at 5 a.m., you could leave your dorm. So then at 5 a.m., they'd walk down to Sheetz and get a hot dog. At 5 a.m. in the morning, that's a good way to break the cycle, and a few other things. But they would get so stuck trying to understand the complexities of the universe. And sometimes I was like, just go do something. Like enjoy life. Come play video games with us. Like we're about to beat Super Mario again, dude. And they would just get so stuck in trying to understand. It's so important that I know this, man, the hypostatic union and the complexities of it. The hypostatic union is a really fancy word, Bible word or seminary word for the union of fully God, fully man, Jesus. And so they would spend all this time searching for, but that's what we do in our own lives. My 10-year-old has to know everything about everything. Isaac, it's time for bed. Why? It's 8:45, dude. You got school tomorrow. Okay. Why do I have to go to school? Because the government says you do, okay? And you need to get out of the house. My 8-year-old's in the AAP. That's an advanced academic placement. She's in 3rd grade. And she just turned 8, but she came in the other week. And he asked, there was something he was frustrated about, and he walks out and she goes, yeah, I guess I'm the only one in the AAP in this family for a reason. And I was like, don't let your brother hear that. And like the dad in me is like, you don't be mean. But like, you know, just Austin is like, that was a pretty sick burn. Like, you know what I'm saying? But don't talk to your brother like that. And that's one of those parenting moments where you have to just bury your head in the pillow because you just can't let them see that you were actually kind of impressed with that kind of clapback. Like people with multiple kids understand this. But he wants to understand these intricacies and the depth of all these things. And I'm just like, dude, like, just obey all the way right away. Let's get in bed, okay? How about I come lay in bed with you? My 6-year-old, I keep calling her 5, my 6-year-old likes to lay in bed, and she likes to scroll through TikToks. She likes to see like the gross ones with like the trimming the nails and things. I'm just like, baby, like, Daddy doesn't have those in the algorithm, okay? You're gonna mess up. I'm gonna go from really funny videos to ingrown nails, and I really just don't wanna do that. It's like, Daddy, just search it up. No, I'm good, baby. All right, I love you, good night. But we spend so much time searching for these synopses, these predictability efforts in life, these things that it's like, I just need to know what's coming next. I need to know what's coming next because I'll feel better about it. And Solomon says, like, this just drives you to frustration and like you're so antsy and anxious because you're so worried about the complexities of eternity. He says, just enjoy today. And some people read that and it's like, carpe diem, don't worry, be happy. And you read that and it's like, eat, drink, and enjoy the fruits of your labor. But a lot of the time, I saw some scholars say that what they've seen is people just read the eat and drink. And it's like, I'm just going to eat lots of food and drink lots of drinks, and it's going to be dandy. And it's almost like some people read this and they think, I just have to abdicate all my responsibilities. The Bible said I should just hang out and chill and have fun, bro. What's up? But the Bible's not pushing us to abdicate. He says, enjoy the fruits of their labor. Enjoy the fruits of your purposeful work. What are you doing that's having an impact and an effect on those around you? What are you doing that's having an impact on those you work with? What are you doing that's having an impact on those you serve? This is where it hits home for me. What am I doing that's having an impact on my family? And that's a positive or negative impact. Solomon, like that encouragement there in like 11, 12, 13, that encouragement is like do things that will bring positive impact. But how often, when we get to this work without purpose stage, a lot of the time the impact we have begins to trend negative. And it begins to negatively impact those around us. And then we get caught trying to figure out what's the next in the cycle, what's next in the stage. And we get so focused on that then that negative impact begins to teeter even more into the negativity. What's the impact you're having on those around you? And then I love that he just says, God did all this. God did all of this so that we would fear him. And there's a healthy fear to it. I read this in one of the commentaries. He said, your outlook determines your outcome. And I was like, I'm going to steal that and pretend I made it, but I didn't steal it. But I gave credit. Your outlook determines your outcome. How does your attitude, oh man, I'm talking to myself right now. Your outlook determines your outcome. I have found myself to be a little more pessimistic lately, and the weather doesn't help. Right? Because then we look at the Bible and it talks about, this is the day the Lord has made. Let us be glad and rejoice in it. And half the time we roll out of bed and we're like, great, another day. I don't even smell the coffee. Life hack, set the coffee to brew the night before so when you wake up in the morning you smell it. It doesn't help, but it is just nice to smell the coffee in the morning. Your outlook determines your outcome. Faith grows by fearing God. Did you know that? Did you know that faith grows by fearing God? I'm going to call the band forward because we're going to start to wrap up here, but this whole idea that our faith, Solomon was full of faith. He was full of wisdom. He knew all these things. He actually says in Proverbs, the beginning, the first step into gaining wisdom is to fear God. In Proverbs chapter 1, he says, if you want to be wise, fear the Lord. Fear the Lord. And the reason he says that, I think of Peter on the boat, and so Jesus, like they go out and they row the boat, and they're like, hey, there's someone out there. And all of a sudden they realize, oh, that's Jesus. And then Peter steps out of the boat and he's like walking on water, and his faith begins to suffer because in that moment he stopped fearing Jesus, he feared where he was. Sometimes in life, often, Our faith starts to shrink when we're not fearing God. I loved one commentary said this, and I actually found another quote from this guy, Oswald Chambers, who's a famous missionary, very wise guy. He said this: the remarkable thing about fearing God is that when you fear God, you fear nothing else. Whereas if you do not fear God, you fear everything else. The premise of, I'm gonna sit down, and because I want to talk to you real close right now. The premise of the book of Ecclesiastes is actually really, I realized this recently. There's so much in common between Ecclesiastes and Philippians. So Ecclesiastes is coming from this wildly successful guy who sought to find answers and satisfaction, all these things of the world. And then you have Paul writing Philippians, who's been through it all. They're like opposites of each other. But the answer, the main idea that they both bring is joy is found in the Lord. Satisfaction is found in the Lord. Strength is found in the Lord. And so the main idea that both are really pushing us to understand here is trust Jesus, trust God, have faith in God. And I'm just gonna speak to you from a place of vulnerability. When my weeks are going horrible or I'm walking through something very challenging, it's because I'm not fearing the Lord like I need to. I'm fearing, how is this gonna impact our finances? How is this gonna impact our kids? How is this gonna impact me? Am I gonna enjoy what I'm doing? How am I gonna, will God use, not even like fearing God, it's just fearing like my own impact, right? Like I wrestle with that. And instead of fearing God and looking to the Lord and trusting in God, I'm trying to find satisfaction. What are the things Austin can control? I'm a control freak. Raise your hand if you're a control freak. Yeah, look, the control freaks are quietly raising their hands because they've probably been told that this week, that they're a control freak. I'm with you. I feel most comfortable when I am in control of things, when I can control my circumstance. As a parent, sometimes I wish my kids were like when they're screaming, yelling, and fighting, I just want to control them with a video game controller. Like, guys, just everyone's gonna sit, we're gonna watch a little television quietly, I get to watch football now. And I just wanna go home on Sundays and watch football. This is the first football season in like 15 years that I'm not serving with youth ministry on a Sunday night. It's so good. I don't understand anything that's going on, but it just feels good. And I just wanna sit and watch football without getting kneed in the stomach or punched in the face. So often when I'm having a rough week, it's because I'm not trusting the Lord. I'm trying to control things. But when I fear God, I don't need to fear anything else. When God controls things, it's so hard to relinquish control. Oh my goodness. It's hard. Because when I'm in control, I can accept the blame if things go wrong. When I'm in control, I can find satisfaction in the fact that I did it, I won. But when I relinquish that control to God, I don't get to pat myself on the back. And so it requires humility. And that's what Solomon's getting. And there's somebody in this room who's just like, dude, I've tried to let God control things and it didn't go well. Dude, I've tried to fear God and 1,000 things went wrong in my life, so I had to take control again. I'm with you, I feel you, we're walking in this together. Maybe we didn't fear him enough. Maybe we didn't trust him enough. I was talking to someone this week and they said what's a good tithe, right? Like when it comes to giving, how much should I give? And I said, well, the tithe is like the Old Testament talks about is 10%. But kind of the New Testament teaching is that really like you give to where you have to trust God. Like you give enough that you sweat watching the money go in the box or it's like when you order groceries online or you swipe at the checkout and you stick your little chip reader card in the thing and you're like, Lord Jesus, I pray hallelujah, put the money in the account because, oh my gosh, I did not expect to spend $500 for a box of cereal and a gallon of milk. But it's like that in everywhere in our lives when we just trust God. We just let God take control of those things and we find that satisfaction in what God can do that we can't do, that's where we find the point. What's the point? It's to trust God. It's to give your life to God. It's to recognize I'm not in control because I can't control it, but God can do it. That's the point. And someone in this room is really challenging themselves to let God take control. This whole idea of fear God is really scary. It's fear, and that's okay. Trust God, that's the point.